Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are back in War Thunder looking at another devblog for the Tone, or the Tone, depending on how you want to say it. This is a new heavy cruiser that is coming to the Japanese tree at rank 5, and at least on the dev server it looked very interesting, and the devblog also paints a similar picture when it comes to its general uses. It obviously has some unique characteristics, such as all of its main caliber turrets being on the front of the machine and having this ridiculous AA battery on the back, but to me, I think it's pretty cool to see. So let's get into the history of the Tone and see what it's about. So initially, the Tone and also the Chikuma, which was the sister ship of the Tone, were laid down as Megami-class cruisers. Because of design flaws, though, in early Megami-class vessels, they decided that they were going to abandon the London Agreement, and that meant that the decision was made to change the design of these two ships and create a separate class from them. Therefore, the Tone class cruisers resembled the general design of the Megami class, but had all their gun turrets placed on the forecastle, while also featuring a heavier emphasis on seaplane operations, which is obviously why the southern part of the ship is set up how it is. So the whole aft deck space was dedicated to it. The Tone was completed in 1938 and joined the ranks of the Imperial Japanese Navy in November of that year, and upon completion, the Tone and her sister ship formed the 8th Cruiser Division, which operated together as part of the unit for the majority of the service careers during the upcoming conflict. Their first combat mission was the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Their float planes were used as active scouts for the upcoming attack. And then, Tone and her sister ship took part in pretty much every significant battle of the Pacific Theater. They were involved in the invasion of Wake Island, the Battle of Midway, the Battle of Guadalcanal, the Battle of the Philippine Sea, and also many other conflicts which happened during that time. Towards the end of the war, the Tone went under several refits, just like a lot of Japanese ships did, with an emphasis on bolstering its anti-air capabilities and also radar equipment with each dry dock visit. And the Chikuma was already lost in October 1944, unfortunately, as part of the Battle of the Late Gulf. The Tone continued serving on until the very end of the war, being sunk at Curie Harbor in July 1945 following a major Allied air raid on the Japanese naval base. The ship's wreck was subsequently dismantled in the immediate post-war years and sold for scrap. So not a great end for this mammoth of a ship, but one service record that it can definitely be proud of. Now, the first thing to mention about this machine is it doesn't have as many guns as some of the others that we see around the Japanese tech tree, but it does have interesting mounts. As you can see, its main armament consists of 4 dual 8 inches or 4 dual 203mm turrets, which are sat on the front of the machine altogether. Now, you may think, well, this is a bit of an issue, and it's going to be an issue for, commanders going forward, because of the idea that, well, if all the guns are in the same place, you can just aim for that area, you can knock out a lot of its main armament, and maybe ammo rack it pretty easily too. Well, the problem with that, and yes, sometimes, with certain machines that may be true, but something to actually mention is there is a ton of armor on these guns. So they're not just, the standard 203mm that you see from the Japanese. There is just a bunch of different additions. So first of all, the belt armor is 100mm on the machine, but the magazine plating, so what is sat around the actual ammunition, is 145mm. So therefore, there is just a ton more armor compared to some of its, ships at the same BR in the Japanese tech tree. And also, there is, a little bit of extra speed as well, 65.7 kilometers an hour. So you are more protected when it comes to this machine, even though it's going to be very obvious where you want to hitty, shooty. At the end of the day, in my opinion, it's still okay for these large guns. It also means that your fire will be incredibly more concentrated because the guns are all together. There'll be less convergence on these massive gun, so that will also be something which will be on your side if you want to do direct damage, or try and be very precise with your shots when firing at many enemies, even close. So what is the major difference between, the tone of pre-World War II and the tone of late World War II? Well, as mentioned in the historical section, it was the amount of AA that was on the machine. And when I was on the dev server, I had a look at this thing and was like, oh my god, this thing might have the most AA in the game, even compared to something like the Eugen, which has a ridiculous amount as well, or even something like the HMS London with its 16 barrels of pom-poms all over the place. This machine, not only does it have 4 dual 127mm multi-purpose cannons, so designed for taking out aircraft and also going after ships, it also has 18 single, 4 dual, and 12 triple 25mm cannons. This means that this machine has 62 25mm on it. 62. And a lot of them are concentrated on the back of the machine, as you can see in this picture here, but they're not all concentrated on the back of the machine. A lot of them are also near the front, so therefore the firing arcs of a lot of them are obviously going to be fine at dealing with units which are coming from the air. Obviously 25mm aren't really that good against ships or boats at this level, but still, the anti-air threat is massive for this machine, and the only thing we've got to make sure to do is that the 25mm open up quick enough before you get bombed, because obviously with these large ships, one of the things that is still a terror for them is the fact that when they have to deal with planes, your AA armament only opens up, too late when having to deal with them. And the fact is, a lot of machines that I've dealt with when it comes to cruisers and destroyers, it feels like a lot of the time the AA guns could have opened up maybe a kilometer faster or a kilometer earlier in order to deal with the threat coming in. Hopefully these 25s will be able to do so, otherwise you could have a million 25mm on this machine and it wouldn't make a difference. Instead, all it would do is guarantee the plane's death after it's already killed you. And what you want to do is be preemptive instead of reactive in that sense, so hopefully this machine will be able to do it. So along with, the large guns, along with all of the secondary armaments that we talked about, it also gets a nice little kiss on the cheek in the form of torpedoes. Torpedoes are always nice on the Japanese machines. If you've never used Japanese destroyers or cruisers, they have the best torpedoes in the game. So therefore, they are always nice to see. And on this machine, it has 2 triple sets of 610mm torpedo launchers in either side of the ship's hull, and they also have 2 salvos of deadly Type 93 torpedoes each. As I said, the Japanese torpedoes are the fastest in the game, they go the longest range in the game, they're great at dealing with pretty much anything in the game when it comes to arcade or realistic, and for me they're just really wonderful to see. So having another top ranking vehicle, because the tone will definitely be a 5.7 at least, having another vehicle which has access to torpedoes is really nice. They also talk about the fact that this machine is very much set up for the observation idea in War Thunder, and well, in historical, I should say, and you can see the amount of seaplanes which are on the back of it, and yes, where the deck was on the back, where all the 25mm were, that would have been some kind of a launching apparatus or something similar to that, or storage even. What would be really nice in War Thunder is if we see some form of use for these observation aircraft, for these scouting aircraft, because they are really beautiful. They're really well modeled in the game, and you can see them in this picture here at the back. They are in a great place, and there is a lot of machines in the game now at the cruiser level which do have a lot of these observation aircraft. So if we can somehow find a way of being able to put them into the game, whether it is just for scouting purposes, whether it is for being able to spot torpedoes in the water so you can react to them quicker, whether it's spotting vessels out on the yonder, then you know, there's a bunch of options that could definitely be gone for when we have a look at these little aircraft. And since there's a large emphasis on them on this machine, and also an emphasis on them in others, why not try and make it a reality? You can also see a lot of the triple 25s back here. One of the things I will note, even with a spaded vehicle, these 25mm turn so slow, so therefore tracking targets is definitely not going to be the easiest thing that they can do. And also, because they have this extra armor around them which protects them against ships, which is great, it also means that it limits their capacity when it comes to their gun depression angles, and also where they can shoot on a horizontal plane. So that's a little bit of a problem, not a huge one because they should be staring upwards all the time, but you know, it's always nice to have a little bit extra when it comes to the you know, being able to shoot all over the place, you know, 360 or 180 in a way. The 203mm on the Japanese do a ton of damage. Their reload is a little bit subpar in my opinion, which is a bit of a problem with them, but with the concentrated fire that the Tone will be able to put out, I think that will be completely fine. I'm personally looking forward to this, just because of the fact that I want to see how enemies combat it. You know, it's still pretty quick at 65 kilometers an hour. I want to see if people go for that ammo rack, and if that ammo rack is juicy, even with the extra armor, or if people are just going to take it out, you know, as you do everything else, and just try and whittle it down until it sinks. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Conte Baraka, Daniel Stanton, Elove Goat, Jay Wilt, Martinez, Trigger Hippie, Eugene's Terry, and also Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.